Pittsburgh Steelers fans, what's going on? This is Jeff Hartman, editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, with you as always for another episode of The Standard is the Standard, our Sunday show, at least in the offseason. Joining me as always is my co-host Lance Williams. Lance, a little under the weather, folks. He's hanging on by a thread. Go to your local church, light a candle, say a prayer. We just hope he makes it to free agency. So, Lance, how's it going? Lance, are you there?
Hey,
Uh-oh. Connection issues already with Lance? You there, Lance?
I'm
I,
there.
I got you now. I got you now. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm hanging in there. Not quite as fast as DK Metcalf, but you know,
I do want to talk about that guy and the combine a little bit. We can start off with it, or we'll talk about it later. We'll talk about it later because there's a lot of stuff to talk about. Not anything that's pressing, not anything that's breaking news or anything like that. But let's start off with, well, none other than Antonio Brown. I do want to mention a couple things. First and foremost, I want to talk about Lance's show that he did this week. Now, if you haven't heard his show, yeah, I said it. It's a solo show that he does on his own. It's a solo show for him. And he talked this week, and as he always does, talks about very controversial topics, hot takes with Lance Williams. We could also rename it to that. But this week's hot take was that something that he actually just brought out, talked about last week on the Standard is the Standard. It was all about how Antonio Brown is using Ben Roethlisberger as leverage, as a scapegoat to get a new contract. Lance, why don't you just tell us a little bit about that in case they missed the show? And I want to discuss this a little bit. Go ahead.
my basic premise was I think Drew Rosenhaus is looking at Antonio Brown's contract and saying, over the next 3 years, he's going to get paid about $36 million. And as the best wide receiver in football, that sum is too low. And I think they realize that they're sort of leveraged, knowing that there is a friction or a fraction uh, between him and Ben Roethlisberger, that I think they've surmised to use that as a way or an impetus or a scapegoat to get out of their contract with Pittsburgh. And I think, his appearances on LeBron James's show, The Shop, his appearance on ESPN, I think all of those appearances are to that end, because some of the things that he's saying on that show, he's just repeating on different outlets. And I'm sure you have an opinion on it, Jeff, that he's actually contradicting himself because he's doing multiple appearances on different avenues and different programs and shows. And so I think the end is really just to get a new contract. I don't think he's pleased with the fact that he set the market. Now the market, because of his age, I believe at the end of the season he'll be 31 or 31 in July, somewhere around there, that this is his last bite at the apple. So image be damned. I'm trying to get a new contract and I'm trying to get a fresh influx of cash.
Yeah, here's where what he said, via his Q&A on Twitter that we talked about a couple shows ago. He went publicly. This is what everyone was waiting for. They were waiting for Antonio Brown to finally speak. They were waiting for Antonio Brown to finally come out publicly and talk and give his side of the story. And so he did so. And I watched the entire extended ESPN interview. It was 43 minutes in length. If you didn't watch it, don't waste your time. Don't waste your
Ouch.
time,
Ouch.
because it literally was, a lot of it was good, and it wasn't all about his issues with the Steelers. It went back. It was done at his home in Hollywood, Florida. A lot of it talked about his growing up in Liberty City. He took the reporter to his home where his grandmother lived, met a lot of his old friends, his family, and stuff of that nature. So not all of it was based around the Steelers and the issues that he's having, but I'd probably say the last 20 minutes of the 43 minutes, maybe a little bit more, were spent specifically talking about the Steelers, where he's going to wind up. And the one thing that never really came to fruition was everything that he said just seemed like one contradiction after the other. He talked about how he doesn't need money and that he doesn't need the game. And I'll read this quote. This is from Antonio Brown. He said, "I don't even have to play football if I don't want. I don't even need the game. I don't need to prove nothing to anyone. If they want to play, they're going to play by my rules. If not, I don't need to play." And Andrew Brandt of the NFL Network quote tweeted that and said, "NFL GMs are thinking, yeah, let's trade for that guy." Not really a ringing endorsement. And honestly, as I watched it, he did not show that he still loves football. It's kind of like it's just something that he does. Um, but it was he blamed everyone else, and he never once said it was my. It's part of it. It was my fault. And that's something that I believe firmly in is that, you take extreme ownership of your actions. And he never did that once, not throughout the entire 43 minutes. It was always someone else's problem. It was Dan Rooney, Art Rooney II, that didn't know his girlfriend's name, his kids' names. He was complaining about that. It was Kevin Colbert and his kids' comment. It was Ben Roethlisberger, that he'd only been to Ben Roethlisberger's house once. It's one of those situations where I don't understand what he gained from going public with this. Not a lot of it was new information, but still at the same time, it's just one of those. I watched and I just kept shaking my head, and I'm trying to keep an open mind here. And Lance and I talked last week about the difference between owners and players and all that stuff, and who gets the blame and who doesn't get the blame and all this. I try to keep an open mind, thinking, okay, he's a player. He's trying to get the best that he can, but he's also saying that he doesn't need money. He's touting how he made $70 million last year, and he's talking about how, look at what he has, and he doesn't need anything else. He wants for nothing. And throughout all of that, and all the time that he's talking, I just keep on thinking to myself, it's hard for me to sympathize with him, and it's hard for me also to literally just put it in the back of my mind that he walked out on the team. Now, he said that Mike Tomlin told him that after the Saints game, Antonio Brown went to Tomlin and said, "Hey, I've got some bumps and bruises. They played on turf." He said, I might need a few days. And so Tomlin said, "Okay, go home." All right, so he sent him home to get right. Now, this is when supposedly Antonio Brown went dark on the Steelers. And he didn't talk to him, didn't return any phone calls, nothing. Went totally dark. And then he said he showed up on Sunday, and I guess according to Tomlin said to the team, "AB quit on us." And then he's telling Antonio Brown that, hey, if you're going to help, you're going to be on the sidelines with the guys, and he wasn't going to do that. So that's why he left. But he never once said that anything was his fault. It was nothing but constant deflection. But he didn't seem like a guy that even loved the game that much anymore, Lance. I don't understand. I know you didn't watch it. I don't recommend that you do watch it. But at the same time, I don't understand how he furthered his cause any by doing these interviews. Lance, you there, buddy? Uh-oh.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think you were cutting out a little bit. I mean, I think Antonio Brown could make all of these arguments had he shown up to work. I mean, once you show up to work, I think people would be more apt to hear what he was trying to say. But I think Steeler Nation is kind of, in the middle with this. I think it's hard to get around the fact that he did not show up. However, like Chris Carter was saying, a friend of the program, Chris Carter, at Chris Carter, or is it Carter Critiques? It's Carter Critiques, I think it is. I think it's Twitter handle. Chris does a fan. No, I may have gotten it wrong, but check out Chris Carter on Twitter. If you come to work, you can make your argument. You can't. It's hard to make your argument from a negative perspective to start with. It's sort of coming to a negotiation saying, this is not what I'm going to do. When you're trying to negotiate what each party is going to do. I think Steeler Nation is being split sort of in half, but there are a couple of things that are true, I think. Um, he quit on the team that week, did not show up, left at halftime, came out there with a Huggy Bear coat, and refused to have any communication with the Steelers and or with the Steelers afterwards for the next several months. I think we can all agree that's terrible. That's not how you want to behave and conduct yourself, and that's not being professional, which I completely is.
Sounds like Lance is breaking up. We might have some connection issues with him, which as if you know that if you follow the show that happens more often than not. So not to cut Lance off, and hopefully he'll be back with us soon. I do want to talk about something that was different to Antonio Brown's situation, but it was Larry Fitzgerald. And we ran this story today. He was, I don't even know where he was. I didn't write the story for our website, but he came out and was asked about Antonio Brown's situation and how he's handling it. Larry Fitzgerald is a class guy, period. He is someone that is never going to say the wrong thing. He always thinks about what he's saying. He's not your typical wide receiver that is a legit star in the league. And he came out and basically said straight up that he thinks Antonio Brown is handling this all wrong. He thinks that there's no way that Antonio Brown's what he's doing is helping his cause. And he even went as far to say that, hey, you have it pretty nice there in Pittsburgh with that quarterback. And if there's someone that would understand that, it's Larry Fitzgerald. I mean, you think about when he was younger, when Kurt Warner was there, he put up tremendous numbers. I mean, great numbers. Got him to the Super Bowl. Obviously, Steeler fans remember that from Super Bowl 43. And then when he left, it was just kind of a mixed bag of goods. I mean, you still had Matt Leinart on the team, and then you bounce around with a couple other quarterbacks, and now you got Josh Rosen there, and Carson Palmer went there for a little bit. It honestly is a situation where I think Larry Fitzgerald is spot on when he says that, and this has kind of been the underlying theme for me as people ask me, and everywhere I go, where people know I'm a Steeler fan, that's all they want to talk about. Whether I'm at my day job, whether I'm going out with my wife, people see me all the time, or even if I'm just wearing Steeler stuff, and they say constantly, "Man, what do you think about the Antonio Brown?" And it gets old talking about it, but at the same time, I keep on thinking to myself, I just hope that he realizes how good he has it in Pittsburgh, or maybe should I say had it in Pittsburgh, because he had a unreal connection with Ben Roethlisberger. Say what you want about whether he's been to his house, whether he's nice to him, whether he extends himself on field. They had an unreal connection, and I've said it from day one. I don't believe that connection can be built overnight. I don't believe that connection can be built with any quarterback. So let's talk about some potential landing spots. The teams that have been interested in Antonio Brown. You have Oakland has said they're interested. Tennessee has said they're interested. Green Bay has now thrown their hat into the mix in terms of interest. These are sources, reports, not official. Because nothing can be official in fear of getting caught for tampering by the NFL. Couple other teams that were interested. No, nothing from the 49ers. I'm kind of surprised about that. But there's been some teams that have thrown their names out there that, okay, so let's look at Derek Carr. Okay, Derek Carr has no other wide receivers. None. Jared Cook was his best wide receiver last year. So you take Antonio Brown there and you say, okay, don't really have much of a running game. Derek Carr's not a bad quarterback, but if you have no one opposite you, and that's something that Antonio Brown has always had, and Daryl on the live chat just said, yes, the Redskins were also another team. Thank you, Daryl. I appreciate that. I knew I was forgetting a team. So let's focus on one at a time. So Oakland says they're interested. Derek Carr is someone that, obviously no other receiving yard. When Antonio Brown was at his best, it was Martavis Bryant was opposite him, or Juju Smith-Schuster in the last few years. He's always had someone else opposite him. He's also always had very good running games, and that's something that they don't really have. Could you imagine if Antonio Brown were traded to the Redskins. Alex Smith is their quarterback. There's no guarantee he's ever going to play again, let alone next year. Colt McCoy would be their quarterback. My goodness, if the Steelers were smart, and the Redskins have been known to give up a lot for trade targets, if they were smart, they would say, hey, let's see what we can get from Washington. Because if they're going to give us a king's ransom for him, we'll take it, we'll run with it. He will probably flounder there because they don't have a quarterback. That's what I'm trying to say. Tennessee, I don't know, with their quarterback situation seems to always be in flux because Mariota's always hurt, it seems like, and then Blaine Gabbert's the backup. I just don't know if that's a good fit. I'm not sure that, obviously, if he goes to Green Bay, that's a different story with Aaron Rodgers. But the Steelers, clearly, they don't want to trade him in the conference, I don't believe, because they don't want to have to face him that often. If let's say they trade him to somewhere like San Francisco, well, let's say they trade him to Oakland. And if they trade him to Oakland, unless Oakland finishes the same position, they probably wouldn't play him that often. Or let's say they trade him to Green Bay. They would only play him once every 4 years. And if you think about it, if they don't play him, if they just played them on the schedule, he wouldn't play him for another 4 years unless they met in the Super Bowl. Antonio Brown would be almost 35 the next time they played him. I doubt he would be the same type of player at that time. Sorry, I'm following the live chat. Lance got kicked off the show, so if you're in the live chat, feel free to send some comments, questions, and we'll definitely flow with this. We're going to give you a full show, no matter what. I like what Daryl says. He said if he went to Washington, he'd be throwing coolers by week 3 at FedEx Field. That is for sure. So I think that I definitely understand that the Steelers are going to have some options. I've never bought into the fact that no one's going to want Antonio Brown. He could say whatever he wants on the TV, on Twitter, on Instagram, whatever, and people are still going to want him. Why? Because he's a good football player, period. So I am hoping that what Larry Fitzgerald said is true, that he realizes that, you know what, this guy had it good, and he just let it go. He just let it go. And a part of me just prays and hopes that the Steelers win a Super Bowl and that when he and Le'Veon Bell leave, that's when they win. That would be so nice. Such a cherry on top of the sundae. I would be so great. But at the same time, we'll see how it goes. No one knows anything right now. But some people are talking about some players that are coming up in the upcoming draft. Now, I've said this in other shows before. I'm not at this stage of the game. The combine's just going on. I don't have a huge knowledge base of these players. And Lance, if he were on the show right now, he would laugh and say, I don't understand the combine. He hates the combine. He doesn't like it. He thinks it's too much, that people put too much importance on it. And I understand that. I look at players like TJ Watt. TJ Watt was considered maybe an early second round pick, maybe even mid-second round pick before the combine. And at the combine, he lit it up, showed off his athleticism, and all of a sudden, he's a first-round draft pick. So players' stock can rise and fall from the combine. Whether it should or shouldn't, that's debatable. But it is so easy to get sucked into it. It's so easy. Like I'm just watching on my Twitter feed, and I'm watching Devin White from, I believe he's the LSU linebacker, run a 4.43, I want to say 4.3 or 4.4. I'm not sure what his second attempt was. 40-yard dash. It's mesmerizing. It's absolutely mesmerizing. And I hope that people understand that when I say, like, I just don't, oh man, my gosh. I mean, I see that and I'm thinking, if the Steelers could get that guy, that's athletic. That's Ryan Shazier athleticism. Seriously, straight up. Like people always talk about, well, Ryan Shazier's don't grow on trees. And I'm not saying that Devin White is the perfect player. I'm not saying that he is going to be able to step in and fill those needs and fill that role. But at the same time, what every single player that they've tried to do to try to fill Shazier's spot has lacked: athleticism, speed. LJ Fort's the closest as they've come, and LJ Fort isn't close to what it could be. So I watched Devin White. I'm like, wow, this is incredible how fast this guy's moving. He's big. And the same with DK Metcalf, the receiver. Tell me if you're listening, I mean, if you watch this guy, he looks like a linebacker running a 40-yard dash. He is a giant. He's not super tall. He's 6'3", but he is thick. Looks like a tight end. And I'm watching this, and again, you get mesmerized. You're like, wow, if that guy wore black and gold every Sunday, could you see him just going over the middle and trucking defenders? Yes, I could see that. I'm picturing it in my head as I'm watching this guy run around in tights, and it's mesmerizing. The one thing I have to tell myself is back up a little bit, take a breath, don't get caught up in all the pomp and circumstance, and realize that there's game film to watch, which I haven't done yet. There's pro days to take in, potential injuries, things of that nature. It is what it is, but I know at the combine, it can be tantalizing, can be absolutely be tantalizing because these guys are they're freaks. They're freak of nature to see how fast they are and how big they are and just how athletic they are. It doesn't always translate. Remember Sammy Coates? He had the size, he had the speed, didn't necessarily translate. Now, some might say that if he didn't mangle up his hands against the Jets in his second year, he might have been better. But at the same time, it doesn't always translate. Running straight line speed doesn't always translate to a good route tree, to good timing, to reading defenses, and all of that stuff. So take that for what it's worth. But there are unbelievably some really good. There's some really good position players that I think the Steelers are looking at, especially at the linebacker position, that they're very attractive players. Devin Bush is another one. And you have to ask yourself, will they be there at 20? You hope the Steelers can somehow finagle a first-round draft pick for Antonio Brown. But will they be there at 20? Devin White is not going to be there at 20. Just not going to happen. So unless the Steelers get up in the draft or get a high-round draft pick, I don't think he's going to be there. Devin Bush, maybe. Both of them have done extremely well at the combine. And if you watch some of their film, and I have looked at some of their film, they're good. They're good prospects. I'm not sure if they'd be ready day one, especially Devin Bush, to come in and just play all the time. But that's something that you cross that bridge when you get to it. But I wrote this article, and this is a good time, and I wish Lance were here to talk about this with me. I wrote an article that ran today. And it's something I do every Sunday. It's a letter from the editor. And essentially I write, and if you haven't checked it out, behindthesteelcurtain.com, it's still on the main page. I essentially go and talk about whatever I want. Sometimes I wrote an article about how the NHL All-Star Game is better than the Pro Bowl, but that's a while ago. Now we're getting into football stuff. And I talked about how, at what point do teams, and if you're in the live chat, let me know what you think of this. At what point do teams put character not above, but at least equal to talent? I mean, when you see the Steelers, if you see the Steelers and the issues that they've had with Le'Veon Bell, with Martavis Bryant even, with Antonio Brown now, and you have to ask yourself, at what point does character become a very important trait before you make a trade, or not before you make a trade, before you make a draft pick? I feel like since Martavis Bryant in 2014, and there's a reason why he was picked in the 4th round, I feel like since Martavis Bryant, the Steelers have definitely put character up there. You look at picks like, you can go through the whole defensive gambit of Bud Dupree, Javon Hargrave, Sean Davis, Terrell Edmonds, TJ Watt, Stephon Tuitt, Ryan Shazier, all these draft picks that are still on the team, still starting. Even Artie Burns. The guy didn't pan out, but at the same time, they have put character up there with talent. Now, here's my question. At what point do you put character? I feel like you have to at this point. And here was the one thing in my article that I struggled with, and I said this in the article. If you were to back up all the way to when Antonio Brown was entering the draft, which he wasn't even invited to the combine. If he were invited to the combine, do you think he'd be saying what A.J. Brown of Ole Miss said to media, that I'm the best wide receiver and all this stuff? I got to think no. I don't think he would have said that. He would have been really humble because he's just a kid from Miami that's playing at Central Michigan, not a big SEC school or anything like that. But at the same time, no one would have predicted he would have gone this far in this direction that he has. But also, let's also not forget that would the Steelers, after what A.J. Brown said at the combine, shy away from him because of those comments? Are they thinking the last thing we need is another egotistical player? And I'm not saying that he is egotistical. I don't know much about him. I could trip over him on the street and not know who he was, plain and simple. But just based off the comments, you have to ask yourself, would they shy away from making that pick because they're thinking, we don't need another Antonio Brown. We don't need another Le'Veon Bell situation. We don't need that drama anymore. We need to get a guy that's going to be team first oriented. Look at Juju Smith-Schuster. Look at James Conner. Look at T.J. Watt. Heck, you could even look at Mason Rudolph and Joshua Dobbs. Figure out, okay, when do you put character up there with talent? That's what I want to know. So all these, like I said, it seems like since 2014 when they picked Martavis Bryant in that 4th round and they got burned by it. I know they got a 3rd round pick out of it, but at the same time, I feel like you have to start putting character up there. You have to. Because if you don't put character up there, it feels like you're just going to run into the same problems over and over and over again. And with that said, Lance finally rejoins the show. Lance, you didn't have to go to the emergency room, did you?
I think so, man. I had some bad connectivity character. Jeez, man.
Well, okay, so I don't know if you heard what I was talking about. It was an article I wrote today about character and the draft process. If you were to put a percentage on talent, character, what is it 50-50 for you? Is it more than that in regards to character versus talent as you're looking at possible prospects to bring into your organization?
I'm going to put it on 70% talent, 30% character. If character can run a 4.35, I love it. But if character runs a 5.2 40, I don't love it. So there's a balance. I'm going to put it on 70-30. I mean, you need good football players. I think you need really good. I think what you need your best players to be high character players. And I think if you have that, then those players can really teach those traits to those players who are hovering in that 70-30 character. So if your best players are great character players, then you're in a good place.
Don't you think you can have both though? I mean, I understand you're saying like character talent can run a 4.40, whatever. But look at what the Steelers have drafted the last few years, and Juju Smith-Schuster in the 2nd round and T.J. Watt in the 1st round. Those are high character guys, at least from what we've seen so far. Don't you think you can have it both ways?
I think you can, but it has to start from a talent perspective first. You identify talented players, and then you ask character questions after that. I think you do it in that order. I don't think you ask character questions first, then talent. It's talent, then character. So I don't think, and God bless the dead, a player like Chris Henry, who was ultra talented, probably on an 11 scale, but just might have been that low on a character scale. So I think if the talent is extreme and the character is absolutely bad, you don't make that as well. I think you look for the roots of solid character, especially if you think guys are trying to be solid guys, but for some reason or another, take a chance on highly talented guys that show where they don't want to be better guys and better players and better men. You don't take chances on those guys, but I think you take chances on guys that are yearning to.
And there he goes. We lost him again. Oops. Oh, fans, I apologize. He's in. Are you there, Lance?
Yeah, I'm here. I have no idea what's happening.
Oh my
Hangouts
gosh.
is just dropping. I have no idea what's happening.
It's almost laughable at this point. I mean, it's kind of like standard is the standard for Jeff Hartman and sometimes Lance when you can hear him.
Yeah, it's for some reason. I don't know if we're having issues in the area, but we're dropping out.
California is about to just implode probably, and you're just not even ready for it. I hope you are ready for it.
Yeah, this is, this is bad.
Okay. I do want to ask your opinion on you brought up how we talked about character and stuff, and you said that the high character players need to be the team leaders. With Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell gone, do you think that the Steelers, not from a performance standpoint, but do you think the Steelers could actually be a closer knit, a tighter group, a better quote unquote team in 2019? Again, I'm not saying that's going to result in more wins. Do you think that could be the case with those two guys gone?
I think it can, but a lot of it will rest on the Roethlisberger, and I think the team will take its character from its undisputed leader. If he's indeed the undisputed leader, it's going to take on his characteristics. So, hopefully that's what we've heard, a more inclusive Ben. Hopefully his leadership style morphs and changes. It's 53 guys. And if he's that guy, it's going to take on some of his character. So hopefully he's ever evolving and getting better in terms of how he is as a leader.
Well, okay, so all right, you know that I'm a Ben Roethlisberger fan. I've been open about that. He's the only jersey that I have right now. Until he retires, I'm not getting a new one. But anyways, I was thinking about this the other day. I was driving home from work, and I heard. Actually, I was listening to our preview show. I listen to our shows again when I'm driving, and I kept on thinking about Ben Roethlisberger. Everyone's questioning his leadership. Everyone's questioning how he does things, and I thought to myself, what is he doing different now that he didn't do 3-4 years ago?
Nothing.
Exactly. Nothing. He's not doing anything different. And no one said anything because it's just who he is. I mean, maybe there's some young guys that come in and like, man, James Washington, I didn't realize he was going to call me out on his radio show. Okay, I get that.
But you know why, Jeff? You know why people didn't say anything, Jeff?
Because he's Ben Roethlisberger.
Well, that's one, obviously. You get that? Okay.
Yeah.
And because there may have been other guys in the locker room to fill that void. I think where that locker room is now, there may not be enough guys. I think, we point to the Cam Haywards, we point to the Castros,
Pouncey.
And that where this team is trending, they may need more from him from a leadership perspective. That in order for them to progress and to move forward where they are as a football team, they need more. And so maybe back then they didn't, so it was okay for it to sort of slide. But now they do need it. And I think Colbert is pushing him to try to be that guy, because I think he realizes it, and Tomlin realizes it, that with this team and where this team is, being a very young football team, that they need him to step up in that role and be a good leader.
Yeah, if honestly, if I'm Tomlin, I'm pulling some of the players you just mentioned. I'm pulling Marquise Pouncey, David DeCastro, Alejandro Villanueva. I'm pulling Juju. On defense, we're going Cam. We're getting TJ Watt in there. Maybe Sean Davis, Joe Hayden for sure. And I'm leaving Ben out. And I'm saying, look, guys, Ben's going to be Ben. Ben's going to have his Wednesday presser. He's going to say the same old crap. He's not going to be here that long. He's going to show up and leave and not be super cuddly. That's fine. Who cares? You guys are the ones that are going to set the tone for this team. You're the ones that are going to be here. You're the ones that young guys are going to look up to. Set the tone for the team. Ben's might go on his radio show. He might say stupid stuff. This isn't news. Now, like I said, I've said it multiple times on multiple shows. I'd love nothing more than for Ben Roethlisberger's show to just poof, go into existence. It's extinct because I don't need to hear his crap anymore. But if it doesn't, and I doubt it will, that's what you have to do. Like, get these other guys going. You don't need to have just one freaking leader on a team. You can have multiple leaders. And so if Marquise Pouncey can stand up and say, let's go. We're ride or die. This is the team. We're going to do this. And if guys follow him, then go go with it. Same with the Castro, all those guys, because Ben's not going to change. We both agree on that, right?
Absolutely.
He's not going to change, and it hasn't been any different in the last decade that he's been playing. He's still been the same guy. So, yeah, he's being drugged through the mud right now. Fans, A, shouldn't be surprised, and B, let's just not freak out about leadership because Ben's going to be Ben. You got to get some other guys to step up, plain and simple. So we'll see. We'll see where that goes. But, all right. While you were off on your sabbatical there in the middle of the show, we were talking about your favorite event, and that is the NFL Scouting Combine. I was telling the guys, and I'll ask you this simply, because have you seen anything on Twitter, like video of anything? I know you mentioned Devin White, didn't you? No, you said Metcalf. Who did you bring up earlier in the show? I thought you brought up a prospect. Did you not?
No.
Okay.
You know I don't watch college football.
No, I know you don't. Neither do I. But have you seen like some videos of guys running the 40 or anything on your Twitter feed?
Yeah, I saw Metcalf run the 40.
That's what I'm talking about. Yes,
I saw the young man from Ohio State run the 40. Campbell.
Isn't it? Maybe it's just me, but I said this way. Isn't it kind of tantalizing? You watch these guys, like you see Metcalf. That guy looks like a freaking linebacker, and he can run, man. And he can get. Don't you sit there and think, boy, I'd love to see that guy in black and gold this year. Do you think that way, or do you?
Man, it's yeah. I mean, geez. I mean, Jeff, as the 5.6% body fat at 6'3", 2.
That's dangerous levels, man. Like that's dangerously low body fat percentage.
35.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you just see these guys and you're, man, they're so good. I mean, did you see Devin White run the 40 in like 4.3? He's an inside linebacker.
Yeah, that's nuts. So
that's Ryan Shazier stuff. That's Ryan Shazier stuff.
That's absolutely nuts. So I mean, the biggest question is, can these guys play football? But you just know, man, that these guys are just physical marvels. In terms of Metcalf, they said his dad was an offensive lineman, so his dad is bigger than he is. And they said his uncles, I believe, were college running backs. So that's where you get like the size and the twitch. So he kind of got it both,
Well, and there's some people that say that he wasn't even the best receiver on Ole Miss, that A.J. Brown was better. And he was he wasn't even the best receiver on that team. That team was loaded from a receiver standpoint. I do know that from the brief amount that I actually watched some college football. So take that for what it's worth. So here we are, Sunday, March the 3rd. The free agent market is just starting to heat up. You're just starting to hear rumors. Lance, the teams that have shown interest in Antonio Brown, we're just going to rattle them off quickly. Who would you like to see him go to? Okay, so reportedly the Tennessee Titans, the Washington Redskins, the Oakland Raiders, and the Green Bay Packers are the 4 teams that have been reported, that are interested in Antonio Brown. Out of those 4 teams, who would you like to see him be traded to, and why?
I'd like him to go to the Raiders because there's no horribly. I would just love, as a fan of drama, him and Chucky going at it in the press. That would just be fabulous. If he goes to Green Bay, it's a wrap. Green Bay would be absolutely loaded on the offensive side of football. So that's where I don't want him to go, is to Green Bay. I do want him to go to the Raiders because you throw him into that whole cast of characters in Oakland, and that would just be comedy to watch.
I said this earlier in the show, I'd love to see him go to Washington. They have no quarterback. They have an unbelievably dysfunctional organization. And as I think as Daryl on our live chat said, he'd be throwing water coolers by week 3 at FedEx Field. So that's where I hope he goes, because all these Redskin fans that are in my area will be like, oh, we've got Antonio Brown. And I'm like, hey, Good luck. Good luck to you. Like this morning in the gym, saw a guy who was a Raider fan, and I said, "Hey, man, heard you guys might be getting AB. Hope you get him. Good luck with that guy." And he said, "I don't want anything to do with him." And I said, "You know, they're gonna go for it. They're gonna go for it." But so there you go, Lance. We've done a full show, but you haven't been here for much for it. Is there anything you want to say to the fans before we call it a show?
Hey man, hey, the standard is we're trying to live up to it. It's so frustrating because we put I mean, I always put my best foot forward every week, and for some reason or another, there's a connection issue or something. Well, at least this week the sound is good, but the connection is, and the connection stuff with internet stuff, you always take a risk. I mean, I got
That's fitting.
that invested in better X5 connectivity, and it just, I think it's Hangouts, honestly. I think at times there's issues with Google Hangouts. But I'm going to blame it on AB, man. We can blame everything on AB. Either we're going to blame it on AB or we're going to blame it on Bill Cowher. Take your pick, flip a coin. I'm going to go with AB, man. I'm going to blame it on AB. That's what it is.
Some people are saying you need to get out of California, go back home to the north side.
Yeah, maybe. I know the connectivity is better, in Manchester, 15233, better than out here. Jeez.
My Hangouts are fine. That's all I'm going to say. My Hangouts are fine. So with that said, folks, I hope that you understand that let me explain this because we had some people in the live chat ask about it. The YouTube shows that we have live on our channel, as of right now, I'm working hard to figure this thing out because taking audio to visual to video, I think I got it. I think I got it. But as of right now, the standard is the standard. The Steelers preview and my show, the Burning Question, are live on YouTube, and you can find us on YouTube by searching BTSC Steelers Radio. Subscribe so you get notifications whenever we go live. But there's other shows like the Steelers Hangover, Lance's show. Yeah, I said it. That are not on YouTube yet, but they are on our audio platform. So if you don't follow us on audio, go to iTunes, go to Google Play, go to Stitcher, go to Spotify. If you just search Steelers, we will be one of the first possible shows that you can follow. Look for the BehindTheSteelCurtain.com logo, subscribe there, and you can listen to all of it. So I know at the beginning of the show when we mentioned Yeah, I said it show. Some people are like, well, I've never heard that show. What do I do? That's how you find it. Go to our audio platform, subscribe to that platform, and you'll get to hear it. His show's about 10 to 15 minutes at the most. My show's about 30, 35 because I do a little Q&A with fans on the live chat. And our other shows are anywhere between 40 and an hour. So take those all in. We're going to work hard to get our consistency down on this show, make the standard a little bit higher, just like the Steelers should. Improve the standard. So Lance, anyways, thanks for your time. I appreciate it. For all of those, someone said they're going to get a GoFundMe page started for Lance's internet.
Thank you. I'll take it. As Jeff is talking, I'm looking up for trying to buy the X5 pods so I can extend the internet strength around the rest of the house. Because man, this is terrible.
So we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. Hey, we're doing our best. For those that have stuck with us throughout everything, we appreciate you. That's it for another episode of The Standard is the Standard. We'll be back next week for another episode.